to talk about the work that has been the impetus for this symposium and from which it takes its title. Then Now, a public art project which Neil Maguire, Nick Miller and I made with and for the Forth and Clyde Canal in Glasgow between 2014 and 2016. The project includes a number of public participatory events, 3 so-called permanent installations, and a publication documenting and reflecting on the project and the wider context of the canal. The publication will be out in the new year, and we'd like to send all the attendees at this symposium today a copy. So if you could make sure that you leave us your addresses and your names, we'll send you a copy of the publication when it's finished. So today I'm going to talk about the conceptual frame for this work, the process of developing and realising it, and our attempts to engage critically with the terms and fulfilment of the brief. Excuse me. The project was commissioned by Scottish Canals and Scottish Waterways Trust as part of a wider heritage interpretation project called Unlocking the Story of Glasgow's Canals. Glasgow Sculpture Studios, who are kindly hosting this event, also played a role in the selection process for the artists. The brief for the commission was to create 1 or more pieces of permanent public art that would, to quote, interpret the canal's heritage and reflect Scottish Canals and Scottish Waterways Trust's forward-looking regeneration aspirations. There was also a requirement for the work to engage with the local community in developing initial concepts for the work. We were interested in the commission for several reasons. It had obvious resonances with my collaborative work with Nick. The focus of our practice for the past 5 or so years has been an exploration of human-water interrelations, and more specifically, an exploration of interrelations between humans and rivers and humans and other watercourses in a range of different material and cultural contexts. We see this work as located within a wider field, sometimes described as ecological practice. The words ecology and ecological are, of course, complex and contested. Other than saying that we use the terms in an expanded sense, influenced by critical thinkers such as Timothy Morton and Jane Bennett, I'm not going to go into these debates in any depth here. Instead, I'd prefer to describe our practice as a way of exploring what it means to be human in a world that consists of much more than humanity. In our practice, we attempt to unsettle ingrained assumptions of humanity's centrality and exceptionalism, to nudge humanity from centre stage. We aim to consider the vitality or liveliness and the potential entitlements and agency of non-human matter in a world that we understand as more than human. The idea of the more than human is one that has had a significant influence in recent thinking and practice in visual and performance arts, cultural geography, and the humanities more widely, as I'm sure many people here will be aware. It emanates from branches of philosophy known as speculative realism, object-orientated ontology, and new or vital materialism. There are, of course, many positions and counterpositions represented within these related philosophical approaches, but for me, their importance lies in their calls for us humans to take seriously the idea that stuff which is not human has a liveliness or vitality and a kind of agency. While we as humans can never fully understand the vitality of matter, attempting to acknowledge and attend to it in our everyday lives might have profound implications for the way we think about the categories of nature and culture, human and non-human, ecology and heritage, unsettling, which are often seen as boundaries. This in turn might impact on many aspects of humans' relationships with the environments that they build, shape and inhabit, and which mould and infiltrate them. The canal, we felt, was a particularly interesting example of human-water interrelations in which to focus our practice. It's an overtly human-made construction built at the end of the 18th century for the specific purpose of providing an efficient means of goods transportation across central Scotland and a comparatively fast coast-to-coast route. Well, fast at the time of its construction, that is. Both of these explicitly anthropocentric functions are now redundant. There's no longer any goods transportation on the canal, and only minimal and largely recreational coast-to-coast traffic. But the canal has endured for over 220 years and continues to evolve, changing status and acquiring new uses and roles beyond its original function. For instance, it's now seen as an important part of Glasgow's blue-green infrastructure, as a wildlife corridor and as a potential component in flood management strategies for the city. Aside from its connections to the watery and ecological aspect of our practice, the Commission also fitted well with another of our interests, ideas and practices of heritage and place. Projects like Glimmers and Limbo at the Britannia Panopticon building in Glasgow, shown in the slides behind me, focused on specific examples of heritage sites, places whose physical fabric is marked by their varied and shifting roles, places that act as triggers to multiple competing memories, places which accommodate overlapping and contradictory interpretations and uses, and places where investments and interests remain contested and unresolved. In her book, Uses of Heritage, Laura Jane Smith, who Tara has already referenced, describes heritage as, to quote, a cultural practice and an experience, which is, quoting again, not static or frozen in time, but rather a process that, while it passed on established values and meanings, was also creating new meanings and values. This figuring of heritage as a process, an ongoing performance, if you like, where past memories, uses and interpretations of a place are transmitted across generations, but also remade and reimagined in the present, mirrors our approach to heritage and so-called heritage sites. This understanding of heritage as multiple and processual maps onto our understanding of place. The conception of place as polyvalent, temporal and fluid is eloquently evoked by cultural geographer Doreen Massey in what she calls the event of place. She says, what's special about place is not some romance of a pre-given collective identity or of the eternity of the hills. Rather, what's special about place is precisely that thrown togetherness, the unavoidable challenge of negotiating a here and now, itself drawing on a history and geography of thens and theirs, and a negotiation which must take place within and between both human and non-human. So, the Forth and Clyde Canal Commission offered an opportunity to bring together what we might broadly describe as the ecological and the heritage strands of our practice, while recognising, as I've already said, and as I hope this symposium is making evident, that the two, heritage and ecology, can and should be seen as intertwined. We approached the Commission brief critically. The wording used in the brief and the positions we felt that this implied urged us to see our proposal for the Commission as a way of questioning, gently challenging and reframing some of the terms of the brief and the assumptions and understandings behind it. In other words, there was also an element of institutional critique in our approach towards the project. These are some of the interlinked terms used in the Commission brief. They're all, of course, words whose uses and meanings are much debated and which are complex, politically and ethically loaded. They're also, I think, key terms in relation to the questions that frame this symposium. For example, who or what are the publics in public art? And that's something that's come up already in the discussions and presentations. So I'd like to take a moment to reflect on these terms. The title for the project uses the word story in the singular rather than stories in the plural. However, Chris O'Connell, Scottish Canals Heritage Manager, has explained that Scottish Canals embrace the anecdotal alongside official recorded versions of history. As he puts it, we advocate the use of the word story over history, as this gives greater freedom to the individuals that come forward to tell their canal-related stories, partly because they're not being yoked to having to produce a verifiable version of events. Given the ecological more than human and performative framings of our practice, however, the focus on oral and recorded history leads us to ask, why just stories? What additional understandings of heritage and heritage sites might be mobilised through other forms of interaction beyond storytelling? How might we encourage engagement with the materiality of a heritage site through, for example, sensory encounters and performed actions? How might smell, touch, and other somatic experiences contribute to a productive and nuanced engagement with place and heritage? As Laura Jane Smith remarks, heritage involves acts of performances of remembering, not just performances of remembering in terms of recounting oral histories, but also in embodying that remembering. Heritage, another key term in the brief, also invited our critical attention. Chris O'Connell of Scottish Canals offers this definition of heritage. Heritage can be defined as the traditions, achievements, and beliefs that are part of the inherited history of a group or nation. While I, along with commentators like Smith, recognise that the work of heritage does involve transmitting inherited history, we understand heritage as being more than the recounting or preserving of past histories. Heritage work is ongoing. Heritage is continually made and remade. It is, as Smith puts it, a cultural process that engages with acts of remembering that work to create ways to understand and engage with the present. Further questions about O'Connell's definition circulate around ideas of heritage as representing the shared history of a group or a nation. Representations of collective identity through presentation of a shared heritage can function to promote dominant ideologies, excluding other perspectives, and thus to establish or reinforce prevailing power structures. Finally, the focus on heritage as the human histories and stories of the canal, what Chris O'Connell describes as a person-centred approach, sidelines non-human or more than human perspectives on the canal's past, present and future, propagating an anthropocentric viewpoint of the site. We were interested in extending beyond this human perspective to consider other inhabitants, users and constituents of the canal. Dogs, deer, birds, microscopic pond life, water, stone, weather. Could we make work that acknowledged this more than human perspective, both in the process of devising the work and in its continued life and evolution? Again, both these terms, public and community, are complicated and disputed, as we've already touched upon. Public and community in the singular imply unified, coherent groupings, rather than our understanding of communities and publics as multiple, shifting, overlapping and competing assemblages which coalesce, disperse and regroup around, for instance, shared interests, locations and ethnicities. In our approach, we aim to embrace this fluid definition of publics and communities. There is also a sense in the brief that both publics and communities exist as separate to and out with the host organisation. Again, I think this is something Tara's touched on, Scottish Canals in our case. We wanted to consider publics and communities as inclusive of, for instance, Scottish Canals employees. We saw the project as an opportunity to challenge the idea of them and us, of the commissioning organisation and artists on one side and the public on the other, which seems to lurk behind some public art practices. Again, given our interest in viewing the project through an ecological lens, we wanted to ask, if the terms publics and communities could be extended to include the idea of more than human publics. For example, the communities of dogs that are exercised by the canal, or the communities of caddisflies that live in the canal. And finally, given our understanding of both place and heritage as fluid, polyvalent and temporal, we wanted to unsettle the ideas of fixity that are bound up in the word permanent, particularly when the term is used in opposition to temporary. Permanent suggests ideas of monumentality and stasis, which are at odds with our understanding of both place and heritage as being in flux, and constituted through diverse practices, interests, and interpretations. The term permanent also relates specifically to human time frames. What does permanence mean in relation to the more than human timescales of, for instance, geological formations or climatic shifts? In approaching the project, we wanted to trouble the opposition of permanent and temporary and embrace change and transformation. Okay, so that's, excuse me, so that's a conceptual frame for the project and an outline of our critical approach to the brief. I'd like now to look at how we think some of these intentions unfolded in the development and realisation of the work, and in the way the work has evolved and received since its installation last November, December. So we proposed and made 3 linked artworks for the Commission, which you can see outside, on and around the canal in the vicinity of the Whisky Bond. These are the titles for the 3 works. First work, well, the first I'm talking about, was called Reservoir. And this takes the form of 9 granite boulders, former canal copestones recycled from Scottish Canal's workyard, each with a scale carving on their upper face of one of the reservoirs that form or formed part of a network of lochs, reservoirs and channels which feed water into the canal. So we felt that people were often unaware that the canal it's not just a sort of inert ditch with water in it, it's actually connected to and water is supplied to it by a much wider network of water bodies. The boulders are distributed across the area in approximate correspondence to their location across central Scotland. In other words, they form a kind of map of the wider water network to which the canal is linked. The second linked work we called Displacement. The physically enduring traces of the work Displacement are 7 cast iron ingots set into the copestones that edge the canal. You can see them just outside here and on the opposite bank of the canal to the Whisky Bond. Each ingot has a relief inscription that records the results of a participatory barge pulling event where 6 different engines, a horse, a gang of children, kayakers from the local kayak club, a team of cyclists, a group of adults and a Labrador dog, each pulled a barge loaded with logs for 2 minutes along the stretch of canal where the ingots are now installed just outside the Whisky Bond here. The ingots were cast at another event, a public iron casting, using a temporary iron foundry installed on site of the former Victoria Foundry, temporary iron furnace. The Victoria Foundry stood on the canal bank near to Scottish Canal's head office from the mid-19th to mid-20th centuries. And the third work, called Now, which is also the title of the whole project, consists of the words then and now carved into the stone walls of the canal on opposite banks. The words are carved at different heights, referring to different historic water levels in the canal. The Forth and Clyde Canal's water level was lowered for economic and maintenance reasons when the canal was closed as a navigable waterway in 1963. The words, as you can see, are carved upside down and in reverse, making them only fully legible, reflected in the canal water when the water is still. In our forthcoming publication, which I've mentioned and which we're going to send you all a copy, we hope to tease out the relationship between ideas and practices of heritage, ecology, placemaking and public art more fully through a wonderfully diverse collection of writings about then now and the canal from participants, spectators, academics, artists, Scottish Canals employees, heritage and environmental professionals. However, for today I'd like to conclude by pulling out a few examples that suggest some of the ways in which the ideas I've outlined and our critical approach to the terms of the brief are manifested in them now. Both the barge pool, where the data marked on the iron ingots was generated, and the iron core, where the ingots were made, were instances where heritage was reframed in the present through embodied, performed, affective experience. Clearly, neither event was intended as a historical reenactment. We used contemporary equipment and materials and had no interest in the pursuit of so-called authenticity. Our hope for the events was to enable participants and spectators to experience a physical and sensory connection with the activities, to get a sense of how much effort it takes to move a heavy load on water, or to feel the heat and smell the odours of an iron furnace. John Main, an audience member at the iron casting event and a contributor to the publication, describes his experience. These are his words. The heat could be felt even from 20 yards or so, and the air had a tang, not dirty or sulphurous, for there was very little smoke, but something that made your skin prickle and left you uneasy. Waves of heat rippled the air above the furnace, which spurted shivering jets of flame, almost colourless in the evening light, occasionally blowing out sparks and black smuts as charcoal and strap iron were flung into its throat. There was a steady, low roar, as if some intense and furious violence was happening just out of sight. Suddenly the iron rushes out, a great gout at first, glowing with a light so intense that the watchers gasp, an intake of breath that brings the smell and taste of the iron, almost of the light itself. The deep ladle fills to the brim, the meniscus wobbling, as if this globule was living, breathing, ready to run purposefully over the edge before someone swipes a bar across, levelling the load and scattering bright drops. The flow from the furnace is stemmed as the bearers take up the long handles and hurry to the first of the moulds. Instinctively, I step back as the ladle is tipped. So I think it's a really lovely piece of writing from John, who's not here today. For barge pool, the experience appeared to be similarly affecting. As one participant puts it, it gave a feel of what it must have been like when working barges were in the river, while other spectators and participants described their experience as transformative, moving, memorable, sincere and generous. Perhaps more significant, however, was the unyoking of the activity from its originary commercial and industrial purposes. The effort of pulling a heavily loaded barge became playful and pointless performance, an arts activity. In what participants described as its silly and serious, or unnecessary and essential qualities, it acted perhaps as a critique of historical narratives where the drive towards industrialisation was presented as one of inexorable and uninterrupted progress. Instead, it pointed perhaps towards the canal's current reinvention as a site of recreation, leisure and cultural activity. The stories, if they can even be described as such, evoked by them now are cryptic and open-ended. In stark contrast to the informative heritage interpretation boards that punctuate the canal towpath, the then-now works are devoid of explanation or information. For instance, as Chris O'Connell describes, the explanation-free reservoir sculptures only display the name of the reservoir, such as Hill End or Lily, and the relief carving of the topography. The sparsity of information and the oblique and minimal nature of the three installations invite spectators to perhaps carry out their own research, or invent their own interpretations, or to treat the sculptures as on a more functional and experiential level. Since their installation, the reservoir sculptures, for example, have been used as objects to sit and climb upon, or as repositories for coins, pebbles, fag ends, condoms, and Buckfast bottles. That's my favourite, a Buckfast bottle frozen in the ice of the reservoir. The iron ingots have invoked several interpretations. One visitor's overheard remark speculated that the ingot commemorating 15 children referred to children who had drowned in the canal. This macabre but quite credible reading, pointing perhaps towards the darker histories of the canal. Another lighter and more playful response, triggered by the line of ingots on the canal side and overheard last December, came from a family walking along the canal. They were overheard reading the ingot inscriptions and reciting 1 Labrador dog, 8 adult humans, and a partridge in a pear tree. So this open-endedness, our interest in the works becoming decoupled from their originary history and meaning, and acting instead as prompts to multiple mundane or imaginative interpretations and uses, was picked up by another of the contributors to the publication. Karen Nuri, a Barge Pro participant, writes, "The idea of future archaeologists finding and trying to work out the what and the how of what I like best about them now. It will all become what is before and after landscape. It's not pretty, it's indifferent." The iron ingots, as objects commemorating the Barge Pool event, sit in contrast to more established forms of heritage memorialisation, offering a gentle critique of some of those practices. For instance, one of the Barge Pool participants commented on the significance, for him, of the unnecessary quality of the activity and the value of memorialising such a pointless event. He stated, "It was unnecessary and therefore very entertaining indeed. Now that I understand there'll be iron ingots cast to mark the afternoon, I'm very pleased. Why should there be no trace of the unnecessary?" Wendy Kirkup and Simon Murray, also participants in the Barge Pool and contributors to the publication, reflected further on the work's playful critique of established heritage practices. Memorial signs such as the blue plaque scheme, which runs throughout the UK, commemorate the links between geographical locations and the homes or workplaces of significant historical figures. The ingots, however, the residue of the displacement project, are silent about any specific individuals who may have been associated historically with the canal. Murray and Kirkup note the potential of the ingots to light-heartedly comment on the commemoration of important individuals at heritage sites associated with those sites, over and above the innumerable nameless publics who constitute the heritage and history of each place. Kirkup and Murray's reflections on the then-now carvings point to yet another aspect of the work's critical engagement with ideas and practices of heritage and temporality. The notions that heritage is continually made and remade in the present, and that time does not unfold in an inevitable trajectory from past to present to future. They write, "Then and now and then, often envisaged as two separate points in space and time, 2 points in a forward trajectory. But we worry of thinking of time in straight lines, flowing in one direction or its reverse, like a river or more imperceptibly, a canal. The configuration of the two engraved stones positioned opposite each other across the canal bank, solid to fluid, reversed, inverted, echoed and overturned, complicates this linear view of time. Can we not feel the past as an eruption or a gentle and secretive seeping within the present, as duration, of ghosting? Very difficult to choose our tenses here." While the three works do clearly reference and engage with the human histories and heritage of the canal, its industrial commercial origins and reinvention as a site of human recreation and cultural activity, we always envisaged an alternative, more than human framing for the work. In Barge Pro, for instance, the performances were not just human endeavours. Our engines were human, non-human assemblages, a horse, a dog, and various transportation devices, cycles and kayaks, working in tandem with humans. The more than human composition of the engines is pointedly memorialised in the ingots. They say 6 cyclists and bicycles, or 7 kayakers and kayaks, not just cyclists or cyclists or kayakers. Finally, at the heart of the project was an ecological conception of the works as existing within a world that we understand as more than human. This was perhaps most evident in our approach towards ideas of temporality and permanence. We conceived the works as open to continual transformation on multiple more than human scales. The works also alter through momentary shifts in light and weather. The then-now lettering becomes illegible as gusts of wind ruffle or rain spots the water surface. They are affected by seasonal and climatic changes. Water pools and dimples in the reservoir basins. It becomes leaf-infused in autumn or frozen in winter. We added figures. That was our Christmas card last year, actually. Frost pours the iron ingots, and the works also undergo longer-term processes of weathering, evolution, and erosion. The iron ingots rust. Algae and moss shade the whitewashed then-now lettering, and microscopic life forms colonise the rock pools formed in the reservoir basins. I think Lavery is going to talk more about the idea of then-now as what he calls a weather work in his presentation this afternoon. So I'd like to end by suggesting that while then-now unashamedly draws on and references the human heritage of the canal, it's also an ecological work that in its ongoing presence and transformation manifests a more than human understanding of place and time.